Morning. I arrived. Can I share the screen, Joel?
Yeah, you can share. Yeah, you can share.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Very, very good. So let me see if I can start sharing the screen. Now, can you see the presentation, right?
No, not now.
Full black screen. Can you change next slide? Maybe.
Yeah, I will go.
Yeah, now we can.
Yeah,
we can see now. Yeah.
So, okay. So today I'll talk about two things. Self-help cooperatives as a means to transform nations. A little bit about the German roots of the cooperative movement. There's not only German roots, there's other roots from other nations, but I will talk a little bit about the German roots, which is just one of the many. And then I would like to focus a little bit on the Canaan Farmer School in Korea, because there is connections between the cooperative movement and that movement of cooperatives in Germany. And I'll show how that connects and why it connects. And I hope that putting these two next to each other will inspire your thinking. Actually, to be honest, I'm not so convinced of lectures. I much like more seminars where you do the work and I listen because that is when you learn much more than when I speak. But as we have agreed to this format today, I won't change it. But I think you understand what I mean by sitting in a lecture of 2 hours and listening to someone speaking is one thing, but then looking at a text and deducting what you can learn from it and explaining that to others is basically the way I believe learning is working 100% better than just listening to someone speaking. So I'll make it as interesting as possible so you won't fall asleep, prayerfully, hopefully. Okay, let me go a little bit into an introduction. So this man here is Friedrich Wilhelm Raiffeisen, a German who lived in the 19th century. He was not even an evangelical Christian in our sense today, as we would say. He was a Christian. I think he was connected rather to the state church, but he was raised with a Christian background, as that was usual in that time for more or less every child in Germany. So, and the other thing I want to say is that what I'm talking about today, when I started researching about Raiffeisen and the cooperative idea, I realized that there is so much more material and so much more information than I can give you today in this short time, that it would deserve a whole, a 1 week seminar or something like that to go into more detail. But what will happen today, hopefully, is that you get an overview of what these ideas are and also why they may be relevant for you, be it in India, be it in Nigeria, be it in Switzerland or anywhere else. And that is my hope. This is the dates when this man lived. And what he did has a lot of similarities and closeness to a movement that I'm part of, which is called the Third Education Revolution. That is the title of a book, actually, that came out in 2021, I believe it is. I have written a chapter in that book and have helped edit the book. And the main editor is Vishal Mangalwadi, an Indian brother who you may have heard, and I think you have it in your lecture plan. When I've seen, right, he also speaks in your lecture, in your plan. Raiffeisen was a Christian, as I said, maybe not an evangelical, but he is. His aim was more than making money and food available. His aim was to transform society. That is an important sentence that I understood when I was reading. And when you want to research someone like this man, so you heard about something like, okay, there is an interesting man called Raiffeisen. So what do? How do you go about it? Do you go to Google or to Wikipedia? Where do you go to find out more? So my suggestion would be you find as much as you can original sources. We call it primary sources. So you read from Raiffeisen himself. You don't read about him, but you read texts that he himself has written. You can find some of them in the internet, and whoever you want to research, try to read primary texts, because that is much more educating for you than reading secondary texts. So people writing about something, that's what we call secondary text, secondary literature. So what I did is I read Raiffeisen himself. I read books, read the statutes of the associations he founded and stuff like that. And that's where you get the information from that I'm giving you today, mainly from the original text he himself wrote. So I'll give you more information on where you can find stuff a little later. So the starting point of all of this, how did this all start and why did it start, is something that you may feel very, you know very well. Farmers that were farming on small plots with little or no technology was the starting point of the Raiffeisen movement, the Raiffeisen cooperative movement. That is something that a lot of African and Indian friends can relate to. Some have bigger plots, but they have little technology. Some have smaller plots and they have a little bit of technology, so it may be different, a little bit different, but that's the basic situation that he came from. The other fact that was the starting point was these farmers had no bargaining power because they had small production quantities. And that's just what I was hearing when I was in Uganda again now, these last days, that people were telling me, you know, we can't do any deals with the big food chains because I cannot deliver constantly a certain amount of crop, because I only have this small plot of land, and sometimes it gives this much and sometimes it gives that much, and also I cannot bargain about I cannot negotiate better prices because I'm just one man. I'm just single here. I'm alone. I'm a single farmer. And these big companies, they will just tell me, you bring us what we want and we give you what we want. So you don't have any power of influencing us. The other fact that was very bad and is usury banking. So when you have an interest rate of 20% for getting a loan, that is basically something you should not even think about doing, because it will kill you. So 20% interest is what I just 3 days ago heard is usual in Uganda. I don't know how it is in your countries, but when you go and want to get money to kind of buy crop or buy seed to sow, or you want to buy cattle, or you want to buy a goat or two, you want to start something, chicken farm, whatever, you need some money to start. And the banks around are, charging extremely high interest rates, which makes it basically impossible for you to survive. And what that leads to is a vicious cycle, as I call it, of debt and more debt. So you have taken up some money, then something happens and you can't deliver everything, so they charge you more debt, which increases what you have to pay back. So you come into this cycle of not being able to pay back what you have taken as a loan, and then they take away everything you have. They take away your house, they take away your livestock, they take away your land, they take everything away you have, and at the end of the day, you have nothing, the banks have everything, they grow richer, you grow poorer. So this banking system is really a bad thing. Additionally, I'm thinking about today, little or no access to financial services in emerging developing countries. There are many regions where you don't even have access to any loans. You just can't find any, because there's no one near that could give you a loan or any other financial service whatsoever. Markets are increasingly globally oriented, which means that you, when you're a little farmer, you have a little piece of land, you are not able to play in their game. So they are asking for high amounts of crop because they're have a ship bringing crop to Europe or to US or wherever you want to bring it, takes a lot of crop to make that, worthwhile. So the global orientation is something that also is not a positive factor for you in the small and in the emerging developing countries. The technologies are highly complex and alter rapidly. So expectations in the technological field, even of agriculture, are getting more and more complex. So it's not as easy as it used to be just to grow some crop and then you bring it somewhere and you sell it. But things are getting complex. So people are expecting you to deliver a certain, I've lived in northern Italy and they're growing apples there. And what happens is that the large companies that buy the apples expect you to deliver an exact centimeter, exactly, whatever that is, the size of the apple, because that's needed for the technological treating of the apples and the transportation of the apples and putting them into these transportation baskets. So it gets more and more complex. The food and agriculture supply chains are fragmented, which we have just seen after Ukraine war happening, that one part not delivering leads to many other parts suffering. So Ukraine was not able to deliver any wheat, which also includes stuff to seed, to start to seed, which led to a fragmentation in what you could get. So all these problems are the starting point. So what do we do about all of this? How can we solve any of this? Is there any solution around that we can tackle? So what Raiffeisen did was mainly two different things. And when I talk in Germany about cooperatives, people only think of banks because there's cooperative banking, of course. But when I talk about cooperatives in Africa, most people think of SACCOs. Who of you knows what a SACCO is? Can I see a hand? Have you heard of that term? It's a saving and credit union. It's an organization that's basically a cooperative. In Kenya and in Uganda and Eastern Africa, they're quite prominent. They have a lot of them there. But these are type number one, agricultural cooperatives. So they are cooperatives that help you to buy or to sell together. So you're not selling yourself, but you have come together with 5, 6, 10 others, farmers, families, and you are buying together and you are selling together. So you have a market force because you have come together. You're not there alone, but you are there with others. So Raiffeisen lived in the countryside where farming was hard and work brought little crop. And the first initial experiences that he had with helping poor citizens was that he started a common initiative. And he asked the wealthy to found a cooperative association where they put money in, and the money was not given away. The money was used to start a bakery, and the bakery then would sell the bread at a price that people could afford. Because when you have a hunger winter, the law of demand and price interrelation will lead to rising prices. So when you have a shortage of supply, prices go up, as we have seen in Germany just lately, because gas, due to the fact that Russia is not delivering any more gas to Germany, the prices are rising, oil prices are rising. And the same happens when you have something like 2 hunger winters, or 1 hunger winter in 1846-47, where there was nothing there. So what was there, the prices rose. Currently, we have a global inflation. So that's also the same thing. If you look at coming back from Uganda, the prices for gas had risen of around almost 50%. from the last time I was there. So people were complaining about these high prices. So what happened, Raiffeisen saw that the prices had risen to a place where a poor farmer couldn't even afford to buy bread. So what they did, they started a bakery. The bakery was owned by the cooperative association, and it just bought at a larger amount of wheat, so they could lower the prices of buying wheat, and then they would sell the bread at a price that did not need to make a lot of profit, because the cooperative didn't need to make profits. Cooperative was owned by the people funding it, and they were not after money. They were not after gain, not after profit. So the idea of a cooperative starting here is, okay, we stand together, we put some money into one pot. From that one pot, we finance something that will help all of us, and we don't have to make a lot of gain and profit out of that. Actually, we don't even want to make profits. We only want to lower the prices so everybody can buy bread. So that's what happened. And that was the first time he started realizing the power of standing together, investing into something that can help everybody, and not getting out of that vicious cycle of the banking that charge you so much interest. And then he did the same thing concerning wheat and potato seedlings in the spring of '47, when that winter was over. So they procured goods. So they bought wheat and potato seedlings for the farmers to start the seed of the new season. And also that happened through the power of a cooperative, because the cooperative could walk up to a seller and say, okay, we'll buy 50 sacks of wheat. And so they could bargain because of the larger amount they would buy. And then if the seller, the merchant would say, no, I won't give it to you so cheap, then they would say, okay, then I'll go somewhere else and I'll find it with another seller, which of course was then a big loss, because if that seller would not sell 50 sacks of wheat or let's say 200 potato seedlings, that's a lot of gain he would lose. So the power of together buying and selling was something that came up and arose as a principle. Then from 1849 was the first time that this principle of solidary unlimited liability came up. 60 of the wealthy citizens of that little small city he lived in became members of the association, and the cooperative, they put money into the cooperative, which was not donations. That is very important. It's not money that you give to someone and it's gone. But this is money that's being used to create market power. And the cooperative was then, because it had that money, was able to borrow larger amounts of money from other banks, which then were loaned to the poor farmers and could be repaid in long-term plan with low interest rates. So what happened was two things changed. One, the cooperative could develop a repayment plan that was slow, long-term. That was one difference to the banks, because the banks said, okay, you got to pay this back in a year, which was not possible. You had to pay the interest and the loan. And then if something happened, anything happened, you were unable to pay. If you got sick, or your wife got sick, or your child got sick, or anything happened in your family, you were not able to repay. So the one thing that changed was the long-term perspective. And the second thing that changed was low interest rates, like 2%, 3%, maybe 1.5%, whatever was the case that was necessary to make it happen. And out of that grew Raiffeisen's main focus of the coming decades, cooperative banking, because he understood the cooperative in the sense of buying and selling cooperatives, so agricultural cooperatives mainly, did deserve a place. But then the thing that is actually more important is cooperative banking. And you find that up to today in Germany, just across the street here from my office, there is a Raiffeisen Bank. And the Raiffeisen Bank is based on the same basic principles that it was back then. So what are these principles? So just quickly, let's take a look at, when you have poverty, there are a lot of suggestions of how you can alleviate that around, you know, in the global idea market. One of the approaches that is often suggested is charity, donations, handouts. So, okay, give the people something to eat so they can survive and save them from starving, which in some cases is good and necessary, because if you think at the earthquake in Turkey and Syria, that is an emergency situation where you only can help by giving something that people have to find shelter and food. They don't have any of that, and they can't do anything to change that now quickly. So we will need to help them, and that's okay. But if you develop that into a long-term perspective, and if you develop a mindset of, I need your donations, I need your handouts, then that is not good, because it's not a long-term solution for a problem you have when you will want to alleviate poverty. Option number two that you have, of course, is state intervention and tax finance subsidies. So a lot of people say, well, the government has to help us. The government needs to pay us. The government needs to give us money, which is kind of just a different version of number one, option one, because you want handouts. You just don't want them from the international, you know, mission and charity organizations. You want them from your governments. But what this creates is also not a very helpful thing, because it creates again another cycle of, you know, when the nation is not developing GDP, so real growth in industry and in wealth of the nation, and you just distribute money from the government, what that leads to is it's just a shifting of money forth and back without any growth. You need growth. You need GDP growth. You need growth of what the nation is building in wealth, and that's not happening when you do or choose option two. But that's something that many people propose. They say, okay, the government should pay. They should help us. They need to give us money because we are poor. So let the government help us. The third option is a communist Marxist view, overthrow of basic structure, society, and making everyone owner of everything. So this is another idea that's around. It's been around for 150 years or so. And a lot of people still believe in that, especially in Africa and in poor countries. And it is based on the idea that there are a few that are rich, and they are rich not because they worked or because they did something good, but because they stole from all the others. So let's consider they all stole this. And so let's, in South Africa, there is a lot of things happening to disown the white, just simply because they're white and because they're there and have a farm. So is taking away the property from the rich and distributing it to the poor. But what does that really bring? What does it really lead to? If you look at the communist Marxist countries and nations on the globe, they are not really successful. In North Korea, people are starving because of hunger, and everybody owns everything. In Russia, it's not exactly the growth of a wonderful, flourishing country. If you look at it in detail, you see that Russia is really having problems. So this really is not an option either. But then there's a fourth one that also comes around. Okay, people say, well, we don't need handouts. We don't want state intervention and subsidies. We also think communist Marxist ideas are wrong. So let's just have this household subsistence, as I call it. Let's just live from day to day and see how we can make something for today and find food for this day. And I think also that is not a right and a good position. But this is what I find in many African countries, where you see people living from day to day and trying to find something to eat for the next day or for this day even. And I think that's not based on a biblical worldview. That is something that is, that's a poverty posture and a poverty mindset. That's not biblical. And there's a different mindset that's biblical. I'll talk about that in a second. So these are the options that are around, and then let's look at what Raiffeisen offered. Raiffeisen's way had a few characteristics. Raiffeisen said we need to help people to help themselves without condescension and a community focus. So his idea was saying we should not give money to people simply because any reason, but we need to bring people to a place where they can help themselves. So we need to empower them, we would say today, to become strong themselves. And I like that idea very much, and I think it's very biblical because it serves in order to build. It does not make dependent, and it does not have condescension. So it's not looking down on the people, but it's empowering people by saying you have potential to work and to generate wealth in a good, humble sense. So, and the community focus is also something that Raiffeisen's idea has. It's not based on individuality. So it's not based on I do my thing, you do your thing, but it has this community focus of we come together and we bring the basis for the agriculture cooperative, for example, by bringing what we have together to one table. So there's a very strong component of community. The core identifiers of Raiffeisen cooperatives in the food and agriculture field are collective self-help. So that leads to the fact that there's some initiative needed, and that really concerns everyone. You know, there's a difference whether you just do like this and say, please give me some money, or whether you say, I will change as much as I can, even though it may be very little, but I will start to change it. So the collective self-help is something that needs initiative by the people, for the people, which is something very powerful. The second thing, it creates self-responsibility. It generates motivation. By saying you are responsible, by giving you responsibility, we raise your value and dignity. So a person that is asked to take over responsibility for himself, for his family, for his community, that is something that gives value and dignity, and it creates motivation. As opposed to money just received, which is not asking for responsibility and does not create motivation, because it creates motivation to hold up your hand again, to receive more money. The third core identifier, I would say, is self-governance. So the cooperatives have their own governance system. And that means that it's not some foreign, organization that is kind of doing all of this, but the self-governance idea says we are in charge. We are governing ourselves, and we have to create good rules that make sure that this is working. And that creates ownership. It creates buy-in. It creates motivation. And if you look at the data from Raiffeisen, it's fascinating that local pastors play a key role in his concept, which I have not read in any of the books, actually. They have just left that out. But in the original files, you find that. So what Raiffeisen says is, and I'll explain it on the next slide a little more, you need to have local pastors where you find trustworthy people that are identified by the pastors. And hopefully the pastors are not corrupt or anything like that. But the pastors are the helpers to build a loving and trustful kind of a control also. Some control will be needed, self-control, not external control, but self-control of the cooperative. So we will have to control each other a little bit and look after each other, which is also very biblical. So very practical now. What are the principles that I find when I look at Raiffeisen's writings? And these are very interesting because I think a lot of this is very biblical. So, and this can also be kind of a guideline that you look at when you want to, think about, can we start cooperatives here in our setting? Number one is you need to have a fitting legal framework on a national level. So if you don't have the possibility to form cooperative associations, and that's a problem, then the first thing what we need to do is to work on the national legal frame to establish cooperatives, because in some countries it's not possible, but in many countries it is possible. In most countries that I know, it is possible to start agricultural cooperatives, for example. And a lot of countries have, by the way, a long history of having cooperatives, like in East Africa, as I said, and I think in India also, it's a very strong history. Then the next thing you need is a well-crafted set of statutes for the cooperative. So each cooperative has statutes, and these statutes define who does what, when, and why. What are the roles? What are the tasks? What are the responsibilities? How can someone become part of the cooperative? How is someone being kicked out if necessary? Because that can also happen. And all of this is defined in the statutes of the cooperative. And Raiffeisen himself has a number of, there are statutes there that you can go back and look at. And there's a lot of other examples that you can find on the internet, kind of as an idea just to start thinking about this. The interesting thing with the cooperatives is that usually when people try to alleviate poverty, they focus on either the poor or the people in the slum or the people in the agriculture, or some section of society. And Raiffeisen has found out, and that's one of the lessons he's learned and he's sharing with us, is if you want to alleviate poverty, you need to have a broad range of membership from poor farmers to wealthy citizens. That's what he did. So he involved citizens with different economic levels, because he said, he went to the wealthy citizens and said, if these farmers are not surviving and are dying, you also are not going to be happy, because your children will grow up in a world that's breaking apart, and you will stand to your children and they will ask you one day, why did you not do anything to help these poor farmers? So, and at the same time, the wealthy citizens are not asked to just donate money to the poor. They're not, that's not the way they are asked, they're getting involved. The way they're getting involved is they are putting some of their wealth into a depot, and that depot is used to get loans from other banks. So the money is not gone. The money is not wasted, and the money is not given away as handouts. But the money is used to create common power, bargaining power for other banks, for buying, for selling, etc. So that's why his idea is kind of revolutionary, because as I've been talking about this a number of times in different lectures to different people, especially in Africa, a lot of people have said, this is so revolutionary, this is so interesting, because it's so different from all the other approaches we have seen, because it tries to involve all the people from the community. The next point that he stresses is the association needs to have a permanent, stable organization. It's not very good and not very helpful when you have a cooperative association that kind of starts out and then is being, halfway closed down and then reignited and then going down again. But it needs to be a permanent and stable organization for common activity. So there needs to be some stability, and that also, he says, is created by involving the churches and by involving the rather wealthy people of the town. because then that creates a pull and a push factor. People are pulled in because they like the idea of we together can create something, and they're pushed also into good work and reliable work and trustworthiness, because they know we are all part of this, and if this fails, we all fail. So it creates a bond of being together in this. Then what he of course says, as I've told you already, heavy involvement of pastors and teachers with a strong local focus. It is interesting to see that, you know, many of these international charities that give money, they're so far away that does not really create a bad conscience in you, because you don't know anyone who gives you money when you just, you know, spend it or waste it or whatever. But if you don't deal well with money, that is, and everybody around you sees what you're doing and they are part of that cooperative, that creates kind of a automatic self-control mechanism, which is very helpful, because it stops you from not being sensible in what you do, and from doing stupid things, basically, because everybody sees that you're doing stupid things. Who's around you? Your neighbors see it, and your pastor sees it, and your children see it, so on. So the local focus is very important and very helpful. He emphasizes that there is good and sound leadership needed, and Raiffeisen even points to biblical qualifications. He does not, I mean, I think in two places he quotes Bible verses from Timothy and Titus, 1st, 2nd Timothy and Titus letters. But he emphasizes that we need to choose good, wise leadership for this, for the Raiffeisen, for the cooperatives. He also emphasizes, which is also very interesting, he says, you know, these rather wealthy people that form part of the cooperative here, they need to work as volunteers. They don't need the money. They don't need to make money out of this. So they need to work without pay. They should not be paid, never, because that will destroy the ethic of the cooperative. If the board members, which are then the ones that decide who gets a loan or not, if the board members are paid, they can be corrupted. But if they don't get any pay, you can't corrupt them. So they don't receive any money. They don't want any money from the start. So when somebody approaches them and tries to pay them to corrupt them, for example, to favor one of the loans that people want, what happens is they will say, well, you won't get a loan anyway, because nobody here is getting any pay, and we don't want the pay. We want to develop a strong village, a strong town, a strong city. So stop doing that. Honesty, diligence, frugality, and hard work of the members is expected. That is something that's very interesting and very important too. Of course, I mean, this is biblical work ethic. I don't have to tell you much about this, but it is interesting that it is very clearly and explicitly mentioned. It's not just expected as in between the lines somewhere, but it's written out, and everybody knows when you sign a contract for a loan, one of these small loans, you have signed this. So you sign that you are honest, you sign that you're diligent, you sign that you practice frugality, and you sign that you work hard. So these aspects are quite important, I think. Then what he also emphasizes, and they have found out is important, is that there need to be general assembly meetings. So you need to call together all the members of the cooperative, so all the people that have taken loans, the whole leadership of the corporation, the CEO. There's only one person, CEO. I'll talk about that in a minute. They need to be called together, and interestingly, what he says, instruction in lectures and living a godly life. So Raiffeisen has found out, if you don't instruct and teach on a godly life, what happens is people will only focus on the money and will then walk away, and they may be eaten up in some some not so good practices in their everyday life. But when you get together on a regular basis, it's also a kind of a self-control. And the important thing is this is not controlled by somebody from the outside coming in and controlling you, but this is you all members of the cooperative are controlling themselves, each other. So that is why this is so powerful, that it's not some external entity controlling you, but it's you controlling your neighbor and your friend and the other cooperative members. Controlling meant not in a bad way, but in a positive way, in the sense of motivating each other to invest. Also very interesting, there is no dividends or profit shares paid to members. So above the usual average interest rate, the low interest rates. The thing is, it is so important to keep profits and money and the idea of getting rich off of a cooperative, that needs to be kept out 100%. If you don't keep that out 100%, you are in danger of corrupting yourself. So keep the money aspect in the sense of making profits or giving dividends to some members or to all members, whatever. Because the idea behind the cooperative is we want to help each other and other farmers or whoever needs the money in order to build a diligent, frugal, hardworking life for their families, and that serves the community at the end of the day. So do not give dividends, do not give profits, shares out to anybody. Also important, what he found out is you need to have a power split mechanism. What do I mean by that? So if you have a power structure that has like, here are the workers and above them there's the boss, and the boss can say whatever he wants and tell the workers what to do. So the cooperative should function different. There's an executive board, there's a supervisory board that controls, there's a financial clerk, he's the CEO, he's the only paid person in the whole system, and he does not have any power to make decisions on his own. He's basically what the term says, he's a clerk. He's the guy who's taking care of the numbers and telling everybody, okay, this is where we're at, this is how much money we have, this is how much we can lend to give away in loans, and this is how much these people owe, and so on. And then there's a general assembly of all the cooperative members. So, and this, none of these four kind of entities or positions can decide anything by themselves. It is very important that there are power control mechanisms installed, because that is also corruption control. You need corruption control mechanisms installed. So the executive board and the supervisory board are kind of against each other in a certain sense. Of course, they work together generally, but the supervisory board has a task of looking at what the executive board does, and if there's anything that's not right, the supervisory board will go to the General Assembly and say, guys, something is not right with the executive board, because they're making decisions based on, family or whatever, friends or corruption or so on. So the executive board will be kicked out and exchanged. The same thing is also the case for the supervisory board. When the General Assembly sees the supervisory board is not working properly and is not doing their job because they are kind of not identifying they're not identifying the problems that the others are making, then they will be kicked out. So, and the financial clerk is also being controlled. So there's a control mechanism from one to the other, which is so important. And all of you who work in developing countries know that this is so essential. You need to install control mechanisms and the checks and balances systems, so to be sure that no one can make decisions on their own because that person is in danger of being corrupted. So have in place some control and checks and balances systems. then that is really that's really surprising if you look at it from a perspective, you know, a modern perspective from today. But Raiffeisen said loans will only be given to people that were living a godly life and had a positive reputation. So the executive board that was in charge of deciding who gets a loan would not say, okay, you'll get a loan right on the spot when you give, when you kind of ask for one, but they would go to the pastors, they would go to the community, they would go through the village, and they would ask, if they wouldn't know, what is the reputation of that person? Is he working, or is he a drunkard? Is he reliable? Is he trustworthy? Is he in church on Sundays? Things like that. So there is a system in place that asks for good Christian reputation before giving a loan, you know, and this is kind of a quality guarantee that makes sure that you don't give money to people who waste it on alcohol or drugs or whatever they may be wasting it on, and that should not happen. So this is interesting. If you take all of this as a package, and the last one I have here on the list is, as the cooperative may have at one point may have money, Raiffeisen said 100%, we do not invest in anything that is risky, even when the interest may be very high, the interest rate may be very high, we will not invest money into anything that is too risky, because this is not our private money, it's the community's money, it's the cooperative's money. And even today, up to today, I find this here in Germany, when you want money from a Raiffeisen bank, it's really hard to get, because they will do much more due diligent testing of the applicant than any other bank. So they will go check you through really well. They will kind of do a, what's it called, an RV, or they will do a check. They will look through you and find you transparent and identify whether you are potentially reliable or not. So if you'll take all of these prerequisites and principles for successful cooperative work based on Raiffeisen's writings, that I find is really fascinating, very interesting. So if we go to, let's switch over to today a little bit. What do we see today? The evolving and developing countries focus on receiving help has created what we call the learned helplessness. That is a posture of understanding the reception of monies and handouts as the normal. And that creates what we call the learned helplessness. It's a psychological term that talks about when you do everything for your kids until they're 50, they will never learn to live their life on their own. So there needs to be a point when you say, okay, you are responsible for your life. You need to take care of your life. You need to be responsible in dealing with your money, with your time, with your energy, with your gifts, with all you have that God gave you. And if you don't do that, you will create what we call learned helplessness. It's an acquired position of not being able and willing to change things from your own initiative, but rely on help from the outside in a long-term perspective. And that's not good. That's not biblical. There is an example in India where if you look at and you see what happened in India, the government tried to organize cooperatives in India, and that did not work, or it worked badly. What came out was it's not working. People are not really buying into it because they've taken out a lot of the core aspects of cooperative idea, which I've shown you in your slide before this one. So the cooperatives needs to be self-help initiatives. They need to be built on initiative of people who want to help themselves and to stand together in a local, small setting, because that creates vice versa responsibility from one to the other. It creates buy-in. It creates commitment. It creates all these things that you need for a good cooperative to run. But this is not working if you have these governments creating cooperatives and thinking that that will create an improvement in the country. Shepherds are needed to oversee a movement locally. The Indian article with the title "Find Raiffeisen" brings it down to reality. Initiative winning exemplary living persons like Raiffeisen actually are needed. So people that really invest themselves, stand up and bring this idea to the forefront and say, let's do this together. We need this together, all of you, with me. And whoever is willing to really buy in into this vision should join. Of course, you may think, whoa, that's an interesting thing, but we don't have so many wealthy people in our communities or in our villages. So how do we do this? That is a question, of course, that needs to be talked about and thought through. Because if you want to kind of take this idea of Raiffeisen into a modern setting, where are these wealthy that put money into the cooperative that will then help to get more money for cheaper loans? And a lot of other questions, of course, in the practical realization of today may be needed and need to be reflected upon. But I think for now, the important thing is that we grasp why this idea has so much power. That's my main purpose of telling you about all this, and that's why I think it's good to get started. Okay, some examples. There are different organizations that have implemented the cooperative idea globally or locally. These are just a few. You can find these on the internet and research more about them. The apex organizations like cooperative unions. In Germany, there is a Deutsche Genossenschafts- und Raiffeisenverband. This is the top organization. There's even more higher, the International Raiffeisen Union. And then you have the Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit, GIZ, in Germany, and Switzerland has them, and of course many others have them. But what that shows us is that the idea has survived, and it's even taken to a higher level. So what these are corporations of cooperatives. So the Deutsche Genossenschafts- und Raiffeisenverband is a cooperation of different cooperatives in Germany. And these again assemble local cooperatives. In German, Genossenschaft is cooperative. So what you find is there's a lot of different aspects that are realized currently in practical ways. And these examples show that what I'm talking about is not an idea of the last or the 19th century, but it's a very prominent idea. And actually, if you go research on the internet, you will find that the cooperative movement is growing. And interestingly, especially in the West, you would expect it to grow in the evolving and developing countries, but not only there, but also in the West, the cooperative movement, especially in Germany, the cooperative movement is growing very strongly because a lot of people are distrustful of these big tech and big companies like Nestle and all of these, and they don't like what they see and find there. They feel manipulated. They feel abused in a certain way because these companies usurp people. They use people. They use them and then throw them away, and they don't need them anymore. And the cooperative idea is gaining new momentum even in the West because people understand that local farmers deliver the best food that you can find. It's much better than the food that you fly in from New Zealand to Germany, which is completely stupid. You have apples from New Zealand that you can buy in a supermarket in Germany, or you have papaya from South America, or things like that, which is, in a certain sense, it can be the case in a limited, maybe, amount. But when you have apples that grow on the orchard next to the supermarket, and you go into the supermarket and buy apples from New Zealand, that seems a little bit crazy. And that's why many people in Germany and in the West in general are coming back to the idea. So why don't we, do this locally? Why don't we build this cooperative idea in a new way to support local farming, and which is a lot healthier and better for the environment and all of that. And then you have local specialists like Dan Jansen in South Sudan, a friend of mine who is working with a lot of different in a lot of countries in Africa. His focus is on become self-sustainable, and missionaries also working in Africa becoming self-sustainable in so they can support themselves. They don't need all the money from the outside, but they can, with people from their villages, can build their own cooperatives. Then the CSS Farming Nigeria Training Center, that is a fascinating idea. Are there some Nigerians in the room, I think? Akinak Bey, are you from Nigeria?
Yes, there are some Nigerians.
Okay.
Yes, from Nigeria.
Great. So, the CSS farming system? If not, go find out. Then the Kenyan Farmers School, I'll talk about that later, is also very interesting. And we are almost at, we're having the break in a few minutes, 2 minutes. Give me 2 more minutes. Kenyan Farmers School, I will talk in more detail after the break. And this is a group in Kenya that you may check out, Akili Group, Kenya, and many others that are listed in the International Raiffeisen Union RU's website. You will get the presentation with all the links in it and books and everything, so you'll be able to find it and can check it out later on yourself. Okay, I think this was part number 1, talking about Raiffeisen and the cooperative movement and the German roots of the cooperative movement, and what is the cooperative movement? Why is it important? Why can it be helpful? And as you've seen, I kind of focus on principles, because if you focus on principles, that is something that can be adapted to local situations. If you just explain realizations, practical realizations, then you only have the chance of saying that's good or it's not good. But if you focus on principles, that was the one slide that had around 15 principles, prerequisites for good cooperatives. That is something that can be applied to your setting. And it may look different in your setting than it did with Raiffeisen, but it can still be very helpful. Okay, so I think we can take 2-3 questions maybe before we do the break, and then after the break, I'll continue talking about Kenyan Farmers School. Any questions, comments, ideas, thoughts from your side?
Loving it. It's wonderful. I think we did not hear it. Are we muted or is he? We are muted. Are you muted? No, it's not. Okay.
Yeah, I'll talk about something a little bit different, but fascinating as well, I think. And I will then at the end kind of try to connect these 2 different movements. Kenyan Farmers School, Korea, is a very unique thing. And I'll talk about it a little bit and explain what I mean, why I find this so fascinating. They have had another challenge as Raiffeisen had, but they have dealt with it also in a very creative way. And I'll explain you what I mean. Korea in 1945 came out of a 35 years occupation period by or from the Japanese. So what happened was Korea was at that time one of the 5 poorest countries in the world, and it stayed like that in the 50s and 60s. Nobody would know that, but that is and was the fact. It was so extreme that Korea took loans from African countries who were richer at that time than Korea was. So Uganda, for example, gave money to Korea because it was so poor, it needed loans from other nations, and not many were willing to give them money, but Korea was, and Uganda was, and some other African countries were. So Koreans actually died from hunger. That was during the 35 years and also right after the 35 years, because the Japanese had really treated that nation of Korea very badly, and it led to a complete destroying of the whole basis of agriculture and everything the country had. So if you look at that and compare it to 2023 today, Korea's GDP globally is 10th. Before, so better than Russia, Switzerland, Austria, Spain, Netherlands, and many others. So how could this happen? How was it possible? How did that nation, in the time of around 70 years, a little less than 70 years, reach this level of international economic stability and leadership even? So just to give you an example, the companies that all of you know, Samsung is a Korean company. All your cell phones, many cell phones come from Korea. Kia Motors is from Korea. Hyundai Motors is from Korea. Daewoo Motors is from Korea. One of the biggest ship builders in the world, so the biggest ships in the world are not being built in the US or in Germany or anywhere else, but in Korea. So these are just a few of the many examples. I could give you a lot more. Korea is an extremely strong nation, but why did that happen? How did that happen in such a short time? Because many of the African countries were just a little bit later than Korea being allowed into independence. And they're still not at that place. So why did Korea reach that? Of course, it is always, if you look at these things, there's a number of complex factors playing into this, and you cannot easily say, well, it's this or this, but there are indicators that this development is connected to what we call Canaan Farmer School. Kim Yong-ki, the founder of Canaan Farmer School, I will abbreviate that in the coming slides as CFS, believed that things could change for the better with a lifestyle of work, service, and sacrifice. He was a Christian, and he started with basically nothing, a very small plot of land in a very bad place to start agriculture, a lot of stones. I've been there, I've seen the place, and it's not really the typical place where you would go and do agriculture. It's not like Uganda or any of the African countries in Central or Eastern Africa that have this wonderful nature there, a great ground, good rain seasons and stuff like that. He practiced and lived a can-do mindset. And that is one of the core things that I'll talk about a little bit in the coming 30, 40 minutes when we'll talk about Canaan Farmer School. Mindset is probably one of the most important components of change. And Kim had understood that. Because there is mindsets of defeatism, there's mindsets of poverty, there's mindsets of fatalism, and there's mindsets of can-do. starting with what you have and things like that. So the essence of the Canaan Farmer School philosophy has 5 building blocks. First building block is change myself first. The first key teaching is things change from the inside out, not the other way around. So if you want to change something, you have to start with yourself. All change starts with you. It does not start with change my boss, change my spouse, change my government, change my neighbor, change my bank, change whatever. It must start with change myself first. That was one of his core learnings, and also core identification points. That was his philosophy. He said, you must take ownership of your need to change first. If you don't start there, you won't get anywhere else. And that is actually hard. It's not easy. It's uncomfortable because it does not allow you to point away to this or that circumstance or people or, you know, a climate or, you know, my soil is bad or whatever. It points to you, to me, myself. It says, I have to start with myself. I'm the biggest problem. I myself. Very biblical, by the way. Second thing, a pioneering mindset. What does that mean? The first key to change yourself and others is mindset, not money. So a lot of people wait for the big money. They say, well, when I get this money, then I can do things. When I get this loan, then I can do things. When I get this and that, I will do all these wonderful, great things. But a pioneering mindset says that we must change how we think in order to change how we act. That was Kim's conviction. He was convinced that if you want to change your acting, you need to change your thinking first. So everything is based on the way you think, and you have to reflect on how you think before you can change your actions. By changing ourselves first, it makes us a pioneer, a leader. You know, that is an interesting facet of this. If you look at it and think, pointing away from yourself makes you unimportant. Taking responsibility for your own thinking as a core part of changing society, at the starting point actually, and your mindset makes you a pioneer, it makes you a rebel, it makes you a leader. That happens in a very silent way. It's not happening by megaphones, you know, talking about it, but it happens in a silent inside change. This is basically a spiritual process. So you understand that when my mindset does not change, my actions will not change. And that is the basis for change of everything else. That was his conviction. Another foundational pillar of what he believed and what he practiced was work, serve, sacrifice. He worked a lot with slogans. Slogans are short terms that you memorize and you say repeatedly. Maybe it's not very common to a lot of us, but in Canaan Farmer School, even up to today, these slogans are very important. So when you go out running in the morning, you recite these slogans. So you memorize the slogans, and the slogans will change your mindset. I'll talk a bit more about slogans later. But one slogan that he has, one leading slogan for the philosophy of Canaan Farmer School is, I work first, I serve first, and I sacrifice first. So why are these so important? The first word is I, but the word does not lead to I need or I get or I want, but it says I work. So it captures the self, I capture myself, and I put myself into a position. And the word first implies that I'm not waiting until someone else works. I'm not waiting until somebody tells me to work. I'm not waiting until the situation is good to work. I work first. So I start work. As soon as I wake up, I start work. And then the order of work, serve, and sacrifice is always the same logic, that I don't wait for someone else to serve me, but I start serving. So my posture is, I am here to serve, so I serve whoever is there without expecting anything back, without expecting anyone to start before me, but I serve. And the third thing is I sacrifice. And this is very, very deep rooted into biblical philosophy and theology, of course, because this is Jesus' posture. Jesus sacrificed himself. He lived a life of complete sacrifice just by becoming man, by becoming human. He became flesh. He became one of us, read John 1. So he didn't wait for us to become worthy or to become ready. He became flesh because he loved us, because he decided with the Father to do what he did. So if you take this as this is just one little simple building block, but it incorporates ideas that have power in them. And as soon as you scale them up from yourself to a group of people, now take the setting of a cooperative and make this the leading life motto of all the members in the cooperative, what will happen? People will work before they see others work. People will serve before they are asked to serve. And they will be willing to sacrifice. And if everybody does that, what that generates is a spirit and an environment of being blessed, of seeing others taking the initiative, motivating me to even take more the initiative, to go first, to even serve more, to work more, to sacrifice more, because all the people around me are also doing the same thing. So it's kind of a competition who works first. It's a competition of who serves first, and a competition of who sacrifices first, because this is the spirit it generates. And that is a very biblically based thinking and philosophy. So number 4, farming. For us in the West, like in Germany, farming is something that's kind of looked down upon. Farming is for people who are, these simple guys are the farmers. That's different, of course, in other settings, but I think in Canadian Farmer School, farmers are highly valued. Farming is the foundation of a healthy nation. If you don't have good farming, your food sovereignty is ultimately at stake. And what I just 3 days ago, I sat in the office of the Uganda Minister of Science, Technology, and Innovation, and when we were talking about what the country needs, she said, Uganda has been used to great climate and to good weather, to lots of rain. What we see is a change. People are leaving the countryside and are moving to the cities, so urbanization is happening, and the crops and the harvests bring less because the weather is getting warmer and the droughts are coming. So we need to water our crop, which we have never done. We were not used that we need to do that. So farming as a core identity of human being connected to the ground, to the earth, to God's planet, to God's creation, is something very fundamental to the Canadian Farmer School philosophy. Frugality is another principle that is very at the core of the identity of the movement. So what is frugality is all about? It's about nothing should be wasted, concerns time, money, food, soap, electricity, water, whatever. All resources must be used with care and appreciation. And that is also something that will create a different spirit if you deal consciously with things, if you deal carefully with things, if you deal in appreciation and care with things. That's something that I see here in Germany. Kids will go onto a playground and just destroy the toys because they're bored, and that it's fun to do that for them. So what is lost, obviously, is a connection to the principle of frugality. So being considerate and appreciating with things, with people, with lives. That is another interesting principle that they have as guiding principle. And then there is a patriotism here. The ultimate purpose of changing yourself, is not self-gratification, but rather it is to flow into service to your family, your community, and nation. Nation, in that sense, is an expansion of your family. If you look at it like that, it's very different from the usual perspective that a nation is to serve me. The government, people in the state are to serve me. This is different. This perspective says, I have to live a life of hard work, of service, of sacrifice. And by that, I serve my family, and by that, I serve my nation. And the idea of nation is a very biblical idea, as you all know, because you're going through YWAM teachings, but many other Christians have no idea about it, because they have not been taught the principles, the biblical principles of nation. And these principles are as old as Genesis 9 and 10 and 12, where they are born, basically. Okay, so that was the introductory with the philosophy of Canaan Farmer School. Now, if you look at these two graphs, the blue graph is, and this is taking an example from Africa, the blue graph shows the growth of GDP per capita. And the red graph shows the aid that flows into Africa. So the interesting thing is that you see as aid grows, GDP declines. That is an interesting fact. So the more you put into, in that case, Africa, this can be taken into any setting, the more you put into in aid money, the less GDP you have. And this of course has a reason, because aid makes you depending. It creates this, what I call learned helplessness. So you get handouts, which makes you lazier. It does not build momentum. It does not build strength. It does not empower. It does not challenge you to go and work. It does the opposite. It makes you sit back and lie back and into your chair and think, okay, I'll wait for the next handout to arrive. And when there is no handout anymore, then you ask for other people to bring handouts. And that is a disaster, to be honest, because it destroys the right mindset, it destroys motivation, it destroys self-help ideas. So the whole self-help cooperative idea is just the opposite of receiving aid, you know. So the conventional humanitarian aid is on this side here, on the left side, and then on the right that you have the Canaan way. And if you compare these, it's interesting to see the conventional humanitarian aid is based on socioeconomic theories. Canaan way is based on a true story. It's based on Jesus' story. Humanitarian aid is program-based, it's complex. Canaan way is a lifestyle. It's very simple, but challenging in everyday practice. Resources are key in humanitarian aid, but mindset is key in Canaan way. The important thing is mindset for the Canaan thinkers and for the Canaan workers. The humanitarian aid is in a way unnatural. It's often top down. It starts big. It creates these massive projects which then lie around and rot after a few years. The Canaan way is natural. It's inside out. It starts small. It's organic in a way, if you want. The humanitarian perspective is not income generating because it gives out handouts, it gives donations, gives charity money. Canaan way is a family business. So the connection between family and business here is very important. And you see some connections to cooperative movement already. The humanitarian aid is taught by experts, and the Canaan way is taught through life. So the experts are always far away people who don't really know how it works. They don't really fight with you through everyday life. They tell you how it works, and you then go and do. But Canaan way says, okay, let's live in this together. Let's stay in this together. Let's learn this together as we work, as we live. Humanitarian aid is replicable to those lucky enough to get aid. So it's only focusing on those who are lucky, because the ones that don't get aid, okay, bad luck. Didn't get to you the money, got to me. The Canaan way is based on principles that anyone, anywhere, at any time can implement, because it's a principle-based model. It's not limited by geographical or financial limitations. It can be picked up by anybody. Humanitarian aid actually is not inspiring to those without access to aid. Canaan way, opposed to that, is very inspiring. It's something from nothing, and that inspires everybody. If you look at it and you see, okay, these guys had nothing, and now they have something. Wow, I want to do that too. How does that work? Why can I not do the same thing? So it will generate inspiration and motivation in you. Humanitarian aid is fast, may not last. Canaan way is slow, but it will build long-term wealth and welfare. The humanitarian aid is considered professional. Canaan way will be laughed at. If you do the Canaan way, it's slow, pretty slow. You will be laughed at. People will smile at you and will say, well, you may go try, and you'll find out that it's not working. But this is an organic way of growing that has a lot of power in it, even though it may take a little bit longer, and it builds something in the lives of people that has a long-lasting effect, even to your children and grandchildren and their children, because they will talk about what you did, like we today talk about Kim Jong-ki. So mindset. Why mindset? What is so important about mindset? There are mindsets that are helpful for development and others that are not helpful for development. And these kind of mindsets are part of the Canaan Pharma School movement, and these are part of the anything outside. So there's a few people that have talked about the topic of mindset, and I'll tell you later where you can find more information on this and can read books yourself on this that are free to download. You can just go and check that out. But there is a can-do mindset. So it's a positive and not a fatalistic mindset. In many African countries, at least I've seen, there is a fatalistic mindset. Life is bad, nature is hard, God does not help, and people are stealing from me. So what should I do? How can I change? Everything is so bad, I can't do anything anyway. That's the no can do fatalistic mindset. But what you actually need is a can do mindset. And that is what Canaan Pharma School inspires in us. When you look at what they've done, when you look at the numbers that I've shown you in the beginning, where Korea was and where it is today, and then you think about this is behind the development of this country. The mindset that focuses on responsibility is the one that creates buy-in, just as Raiffeisen did. The mindset that's not helpful is a focus on personal rights. So I have this right, you owe me this, and I need to get this from the government or from whoever, or from a charity, or they have not given this to us yet, so they need to give it to us. Forget about it. You will wait until forever. Start changing things today. Become responsible for your own life. Take it into your hand and become what God has created you to be, a responsible individual, responsible for your family, for your community, for the people around you. Start doing things. Work is a blessing. It's not a curse. So a lot of people think that work is a curse. But if you look into the Bible, God presents himself as a worker. He works 6 days. That's the first page of the Bible. He tells us, I've been working 6 days, so you guys learn from me. He's busy, and then he rests 1 day. So both is okay, but God is a worker, and work is a blessing. He gives to us. It's not a curse. The mindset is helpful is future-oriented and not past-oriented. So when you go to a past-oriented mindset, it will always talk about, well, back then when things were good. Now everything is bad. Now everything is so hard. It's so difficult. It's become so difficult to do anything. But the mindset that is helpful, and that is the Canaan Farmer School mindset, looks into the future and says, we want not to look back. We want to pick up what God has put in front of us and change tomorrow. And we want to create a different tomorrow than we had yesterday. It values time in the sense of it esteems time as a gift. The mindset is not helpful for development. It doesn't value time. Time is not something that's just cheaply given away. Time is something that you will need to build strong and long-lasting growth. It will take time. Time is good and time is important. It seeks justice. Mindset that's not helpful allows corruption. So this is just the question of, where are you on this scale? Are you willing to be a no excuse, no corruption man, woman? It sees many resources. The helpful mindset sees resources, and the mindset not helpful sees the limitations. It sees always what we don't have. We don't have this, we don't have that. If we would have that, then everything would be different. If I would have this machine or this company or this guy or this government or this leader or this church or this whatever this health, you need to see that there are resources. Even if there are very few, they are there. And that's what Canaan Farmer School mindset builds on. It says, there may be little, but there is something. And we can start with that little bit. The helpful mindset values people, and the not so helpful favors some people. So it focuses on, for example, it says, okay, we want to have the vitamin B kind of connection. Only the important people that will help us are the ones that we really want to take contact and keep contact and a relationship with. So the helpful mindset values relationships to people, to earth, etc. And the mindset not helpful uses people. Values and uses are two very different verbs, as you can read. So you see that mindset is, for Canaan Farmer School, is one of the key elements of change. There are different mindsets around, and which mindset you follow is a decision that you have to make. We all have to make this decision. Do I look at what is missing? Do I look at work as a curse? Do I look at allowing corruption as part of my mindset? If I will end up in a place that's not going to be very helpful for me and my family and my community. And if I will choose the opposite, it will take long, it will take sweat, it will hurt, but it will create wealth and welfare for my family and myself. Even though it may take very long and be very painful, it will create something different. Now let's look at a few of the slogans that they use. They actually do that even while they eat. So at lunch or dinner, when you're there, when you would go there, you would chant these. Let's learn until we know. Let's devote ourselves to work, and let's serve in humility. That's one of the slogans. And that is memorized. So what you memorize forms your mind, forms your mindset, changes your work. You're thinking first, and then you're acting. Start with what you have. I personally find that one of the most powerful slogans that they have. Start with what you have, even if you only have 2 square feet of ground. That is something. You can start with that. Even if you have just 1 goat, that is something you can start with. You need to think about what is in that, what you have. How can you grow that? How can you make it more? Change myself first, change now first, change here first, change small things first, change doable things first, change until the end. So the word that comes back again is change. It's change. If you don't believe in the necessity and the possibility of change, you're in a fatalistic worldview, fatalistic mindset. Because a fatalistic mindset says, things are bad, I can't change, I'm such a poor guy, and my life is such a pity, and so I sit on my bag and whine. That's not the posture that will help you. That's not the mindset that will take you somewhere else. This one is also very powerful. Do not eat to eat, but eat to work. If you don't like to work, do not eat. Work at least 4 hours for each meal. Think about that. That's really powerful. Do not eat to eat, eat to work. If you don't like to work, do not eat. Work at least 4 hours for each meal. Very simple. But the point in this is we have to find ways how to shape our minds. I mean, you can do all these things also by reciting Bible verses. They will partly achieve the same thing. But the importance of mindset empowerment by repetition is very important. Okay. Now, if you want to understand more about what is Canaan Farmer School, why is it important? There's a book, it's called Reinventing Africa's Development. This is not only interesting for Africa, it is also interesting for India or for any other countries in the emerging and developing world. But this book is very interesting. It's called Reinventing Africa's Development, Linking Africa to the Korean Development Model, Jung-Dae Park. And the good thing about this book is it's free to download on the internet. You can download it as a PDF. You can read it on your cell phone, even on your mobile phone, or on a tablet, or whatever you have as a device. And in this book, the author, Jung-Dae Park, who has been living in Africa most of his life, explains how he connects the Korean development to the African situation. So I would love to see someone read the book and then write an article about it for your nation, for Nigeria, for Uganda, for Kenya, for Malawi, wherever you are, or for India, because I think what we need is a deeper reflection upon these things. Of course, you will not agree with every single aspect that he writes in this book. I don't really know if he's a believer or not, but I know that the principles he brings out are very helpful, and the points he makes are very helpful, and they're much in line with what I have said here. I will send you this presentation so you can click on the link then, and you find the PDF there. And then there's another resource that I would suggest and offer you. It's called New Nations. It is this little brochure. It has 120 pages or so. Hope for Every Nation from Canaan Farmer School and Korea's National Transformation. It's written by Randall Hogue, one of the leaders of the World Food Program. He is really, and this is a concise summary of the whole Canaan Farmer School ideas. And the concept of this little booklet is it can be used as a group, to have a group work chapter by chapter. It has questions at the end of each chapter. You can discuss the chapters and the questions, and then you can go through and develop an adapted concept of CFS for your setting. Very, very good. I can send this to you as a PDF. And then there's a Facebook site of Canaan Global Leadership Center. That's what they call it now. Currently at the place where the Canaan Farmer Movement started, they have a leadership training center. And you can go and you can participate in trainings they offer there. And I think you can apply for scholarships even. And they also have training centers and sites in many, many other countries in the world. And this link gives you a little background info on Korea's economy and the development of its economy. So this is more or less almost my last slide. If you look at the whole, what I said today, these two, I showed you Raiffeisen cooperative idea, and I showed you Canaan Farmer School ideas a little bit. I just kind of gave you a rough picture. I think there are two levels of implications. The one level is the concepts in themselves. So the Raiffeisen cooperative idea as an organization, the Canaan Farmer School as a concept of transformational group. These concepts can be implemented, adapted, of course, to the situation you are living in. They will probably look a little different, but that is one level of implication that may be important or not for you, that you decide that. But then there's another level of implications. The development of these and similar concepts shows living and thinking based on a biblical work ethic and thinking based on a biblical Christian worldview leads to innovative and people-blessing ideas and activities. You know, Kim Yong-ki and Friedrich Wilhelm Raiffeisen were just two people. They were just normal people like you and me. Their thinking was formed by the Bible. So they came up with these concepts, with these ideas. And that has very strong implications for everybody here, for all of us, because it tells us that if you base your thinking on the right biblical worldview and work ethic, you also can become some Raiffeisen or some Kim Yong-ki and develop things that may be helpful for your family, your community, and even your nation. And I think that is the most, even the most fascinating aspect of this whole lecture, is that all of you have the potential to become a Raiffeisen or to become a Kim Yong-ki, to become somebody who develops a concept or an idea or a model that people will talk about 50 years from now. And they will say, wow, there was this young man or this young lady who sat in SBCW Switzerland in 2023, or sat in Waiwam Ibadan or in Kochi or wherever, and they started thinking about an idea how they could change their communities and develop their nations for the better. They came up with this concept. Wow, cool. that is the most inspiring aspect of this whole lecture. I find that all of you have the potential to become a Raiffeisen and a Kim Yong-ki. Okay, now I think we have a little time left. Let's talk about what are your questions, what are your thoughts, what are your comments? You can add anything, you can report on your own experiences. Maybe you have different experiences, maybe you have additional thoughts, maybe you have questions. So please feel free to come up with whatever you think is maybe interesting for the others too. All right, let's maybe we do the following. Most of you are in groups, right? I think there's Catherine and PG is alone on themselves. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
So the rest of you, why don't you gather for, let's say, 5 minutes or so in your group and ask the questions that you think might be, or talk about what this means for you, for your setting, for your where you are based. What could be the consequences? What could be the challenges that you may need to pick up? And then if you want to share something, and when we get back together in 5 to 10 minutes, then share it with us. If you don't have anything to share, it's okay. But maybe it's good for you to interact in your place amongst yourselves and discuss, what does this mean for me, for you, for us as a group, in our nation, or in our context. And if you want to share something later, that would be great. But I think let's take some time to discuss. I don't know, maybe Catherine, if you want to, we can chat, or you can chat with the SBCW group, or whatever you prefer. Okay, so now it's 11:29. Let's meet again, say in let's take 10 minutes at 11:40.
Yeah, that's a good time.
10 minutes from now, and then let's get back and hear what you have been discussing.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay.
You want to mute
I
us?
think we can do as couples.
Just listen to them. Do you want to mute them?
We
Mute us.
You probably should mute in Switzerland your microphone for that.
We're on it. Thank you.
Okay, are you guys, have you discussed anything? Are you ready? Can you maybe wrap up your discussions?
Very looked down farmers.
Everywhere I'm from is doing that. As a farmer, I say no, go to university.
Really? Wow.
No.
He's working somewhere. So it's like.
Yeah.
No hard charter expenses.
Yeah, I guess, Andreas, are you ready for us to go then? Report back a little bit?
Yeah, I would just like to see, is Kochi ready too? And Catherine, you ready too? You guys are all muted. Just okay.
I think.
Coach is ready now.
Yeah.
Yes, we're just back now.
All right, perfect. So what is Switzerland group talking about?
Yeah, so we had a couple of things to feedback about. We thought that it was just like the values of CFS was just like a good translation of biblical values into the secular world. So it wasn't just like this, values that, sometimes we have the values that are very just Christian and they're, hard to translate, but we felt that a lot of those values were just very well translated into the secular world. We were briefly talking as well, just like comparing like Singapore and Japan, because they had a very, similar growth out of World War II that became, very big and comparable to Korea in many ways too, just in how much they rapidly developed. And then, one of our questions we had was that, do you think like this model that CFS gave, is it like replicatable in all areas of society? It seems so to us, but we were curious your thoughts on that. Is it more particular to farming and banking only, or is there more beyond that as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So the Canaan Farmers School movement was very Christian, or the basis of that movement is very clearly Christian. What happened was that as they spread into different locations in Korea and started kind of hubs in different places where they implemented this Christian life philosophy and this Christian life mindset, people were realizing that, okay, these guys are something. At the beginning, everybody laughed at them. And then they started realizing, okay, this is something really interesting. So what happened in 1962, that's a few years into the development of Canaan Farmer School, the president of Korea went to see it himself because he had heard about that Canaan Farmer School thing and thought it would be worth having a look at that, because he saw that they were quite successfully developing where they were, the communities. And so he went, and what came out of that was what we call the New Village movement, which is if you go to the history books talking about Korea's history, you will find New Village movement. You will probably barely find anything about Canaan Farmer School, because what happened was that the New Village movement was the political implementation of these Christian mindset, life skill philosophies into a political structure. So the government then decided that all parliamentarians needed to go to Canaan and to learn from them. And then they started implementing government measures and programs to strengthen the villages. And they were very much based on principles that came from Canaan Farmer School, Kim Yong-ki. And so my answer is twofold. I think it's not, I mean, a lot of people, when I talk about these things, a lot of people, Christians especially, accuse me of kind of making a mistake in saying that the goal of what we do is the betterment of society, and neglecting the fact that people need to be Christians in order to be transformed from the inside out? And my answer is always twofold. I always say, so we do need missions and evangelism work. There's no question about that. But I think there are principles in the 10 Commandments and in other scripture that are applicable to a society as a whole, independently of the fact whether the people are Christian or not. Because if you look at, for example, thou shalt not steal, one of the commandments, to implement that in a society as a rule is not necessarily require everybody in that society to be a Christian. Of course, to fulfill that law, it helps a lot to be Christian, because from the inside out, the power to really live a life according to these good ordinances from God only can happen when you are reborn in Christ. You're born again, as we say, we God and say. But at the same time, there is strength for societies that decide to follow these rules. And there are many, many examples, and Korea is just one of them. When you adhere to these principles and to these guidelines of God's commandments, society as a whole can also be blessed and changed. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but it may give a hint of what I think. Does it communicate a little bit?
That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. How are you doing in Kochi? Where is Kochi? Friend, tell me. You're muted. Can you turn on the microphone? And go closer to the microphone so everybody can hear.
Yeah, can you hear me as well?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, actually, we were just talking about those looking at those principles of the Canon Commerce book. So, like we were talking about the paternalistic mindset, you know, like we could see that in many times in ourselves, and we could see that many like it's just so common actually here. You know, so it's like, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, we couldn't get to talk so much other things, but we were just talking. You know, we can just. I mean, the first thing would be like, you know, that we see ourselves, and then we also change, and then, you know, and then if we are able to change that, you know, in the mindset of the people, also like that itself will bring a lot of, you know, change in the society. That would be the first thing that we could think of, or we could, you know, try to do. So yeah, those are just a few things that we were able to talk actually. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. What about Ibadan?
Yeah, I want to talk about the principles that you have taught us that, is it reference? References.
Yes, Raiffeisen, yeah.
Yes, the principle of creating a cooperative society that works. He said fitting legal framework on a national level, and you have to have a broad-based membership that includes both the wealthy and poor. And he talks about permanent, stable organization for common activity. What I want to talk about there mainly is it all starts with your character, your mindset, because you said even in these organizations, you cannot access a loan if you do not have a good character, if the people cannot give a good account of yourself. So what I learned here is basically starts with the self. When you work on yourself first, then all other things will fall in place. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And let me add, in addition, when you're talking about the agricultural cooperative and the banking cooperative, I know some group of people in site here, who amongst them, maybe they are more wealthier than other farmers. So what they do is they lend loans to farmers, and at the end of the day, that is when harvest time comes, they collect more interest on the good. For example, maybe if they can give them some amount of money, maybe 20,000 naira now, and they ask them to, at harvest time, they will give them back maybe a bag of their crop, which makes it difficult for them to help themselves the coming year. And it goes on like that and like that. So whatever they get as profit goes for the people that loans them money. So I was thinking of that when you were talking about the cooperative and the cooperative. I was learning a lot about that. I see that as the weakest.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, these points are both very good, and I think that is one of the main leading, I think, the thoughts that, I mean, if we really want to do anything with these thoughts today, I think we have to adapt a lot, but still these very basic principles, I think they should be non-negotiables, because if you on one of these basic principles don't stick to them, you will not make it. So for example, if you give up the principle of having the power checks and balances by different institutions in the organization, it will not run. Or if you start giving loans to people that may not be able to really pay back, what that leads to, of course, is the corporation will the cooperative will stand without money at one point, because when people don't pay back, of course that happens sometimes. Then what you usually do, what Raiffeisen did, was he stretched the time to pay back, not just longer. So when somebody had a problem, he would not go and say, okay, either you pay us back or we take all your property. He would say, you have to pay back. We see that you have been hit by some, whatever disease, or your family is sick or something like that, or a bad year in harvest. So you'll have to pay back in a slower mode. But so, and sometimes when the farmer dies, for example, then you don't get back the loan maybe. So, and that is a problematic situation then, because if that happens with a few of the people that you have loaned money out to, you're losing money, which is not supposed to happen. So you need to be very, very careful to, these are very challenging things that you need to take care of. And so you better build some backup, even you keep some backup, and that all this is laid out in detail in his 200-page statute thing that I have read. So I'm not saying it's easy, but I think the idea is correct to cooperatively together take responsibility and combine that with the CFS model of start with what you have, even if it's little, but work diligently and hard, and then see things come together and stop waiting for someone else to bring you money. I think that is very powerful, the combination of these. So yeah, thank you for your additional comment. That was really good. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Andreas, just one more question. As you are from Germany, how did it happen with the economic growth after World War II? Germany has increased and became like one of the strongest economy in Europe, because it's almost like totally crashed to ground by the end of the World War II. How did it here? Like I was looking at Wikipedia, and it calls as economic miracle.
Yeah.
So can you please explain from German perspective?
Well, I think that, as always, there's many factors coming into this, but I think so. One factor that many of the analysts and historians point out is that if you think of Germany in the year 1945, 1946, after the war, what happened was, I mean, there were millions of males who have never come back from war. Some came back 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years later from being war. What is it called? They were put in jail and were only released many years after the war was over. So the economy was down in a certain sense, but there's a saying in German that the war widows built Germany. The war widows were the ones that built, at least the first 10 years probably, were mostly done by courageous and strong women. And actually, I believe women in many cases are the better builders than men. So they're the stronger ones. They are tougher than men, and they have more will and stick to things that they have promised. So the women in the first 10 years of Germany after the war have played a very important role, because a lot of males were just dead. They were not there anymore. So the women rebuilt Germany to a certain extent. And then the other thing is, of course, I think there's still prominent Christian work ethic that was shaped by the churches, and the will to just rebuild the nation was strong. So the growth was slow, actually, because the 50s were very hard years. I remember my grandmother speaking about the 50s being extremely hard years. So the economy started really picking up in the 60s. So it took 15 years that were really hard, but people were willing to invest all they had to rebuild. And it is the mindset that I was describing from Canaan Farmer School. It is the start with what you have. Don't be discouraged. Have a positive mindset. Use the little you have and make more out of it. And all of this that I've described from CFS, I think, was also quite prominent in Germany in the 50s and the 60s.
Thank you. Very good to hear that.
I have another question about that.
Yeah.
And America, I mean, there is a debate, kind of watch on in the internet, about the Marshall Plan. I mean, America say that the Marshall Plan saved Germany. Mm-hmm. And in contradiction, some Germans say, no, it's not the case. But can you say something about that?
That's Marcos, right? I understood the last question. I didn't really understand so well. Can you repeat?
So it's just the Marshall Plan. So I mean, the thing is, America think that they gave money, what you said before, or gave money, and this saved Germany, and Germany became strong because they, through the Marshall Plan, they gave Germany all the money, and therefore they became strong. So the Germans say, no, we did it out of ourselves. It was not the money, because the Russians did the same to the DDR, and it was different, it didn't work. So can you say something to that?
Well, I think I would not be, I'm not the best historian to talk about this in detail, but of course, I think the Marshall Plan did help, especially in those first 5 years or so, when people were starving. I mean, it's like when you look at Turkey, where you had the earthquake, or Syria. This is a situation where where a place is simply completely destroyed. And if you want to know what Germany looked like after the war, you can look at the pictures from Syria and from Turkey. That's what Germany looked like after the war. Even in the last days of the war, some cities, when it was already decided that Germany was going to accept the defeat, they were still coming and bombing Dresden and putting it into ashes. Already, although it was already known that they were surrendering. So there was so much anger and of course, rightly so. But the thing is, I believe no factor in itself, no one factor in itself can be responsible, made responsible for the development of Germany. It is a mix of a lot of different factors. So if you only take the Marshall Plan, and German people would not have loved to work and loved to rebuild their nation, then it wouldn't have happened. So the argument, like the GDR also received a lot of money from Soviet Union, that mention is correct, because if you compare the GDP development of GDR, the German Democratic Republic, Eastern Germany, and Western Germany, of course there's a major difference in that, especially in the 60s, 70s, and then 80s, where you see it kind of going apart in so different directions. So I'm not the specialist at German history of post-World War II. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
What would he suggest
Do you mind just going up and doing
Yeah,
it?
I mean, I can.
We have one more.
Yeah.
There's some question. Yeah.
So I have a question. What would you suggest to a person who wants to start something in the community, or like build something for the community? Where is a good point to start?
So that's a very simple question.
Yes.
You need to get this and start reading it and start implementing it. I'll send you it as a PDF. This is a workbook that you can work through with 1 or 2 more people, and then as they buy into it, you can go and do it with 5 more people, and so on and so on. So this booklet has a lot of power in it. First, it's just 100 pages, but it's got a lot of power in it. And I think if you start thinking, praying, and talking about this, you will develop approaches for your community that can be extremely helpful. And you have to start with yourself first. That's the basic principle.
Yes, I think I am already there. That's why I had a question. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, there is one more question coming.
Yeah.
Catherine.
Hello, Andreas. Yeah, thank you for your teaching. Yeah, I was just wondering, what are some of the best ways, do you think, to build accountability so there is no aspect of control that can come up into these situations?
Yes, I understand. I personally think, or my experience is that if you want to build accountability, the best thing is to not be hierarchical, because if you are too hierarchical in building accountability structures, what will happen is people will find workarounds for that, and that will lead to escapes. But if you have eye-level accountability, which Raiffeisen emphasized very much in his approaches, then you will, how do I say that? It will create responsibility in a different way than if you have someone who is richer, wealthier, more influential, or something like you, which always gives you kind of an internal justification to steal, to rob, to lie, and to do these things, because you always say, well, this person is more powerful than me anyway. So I think the most powerful accountability structures are installed when you have an eye-level accountability of people like Africans making other Africans responsible. Ugandans keeping other Ugandans responsible works much better than Germans being the ones checking on responsibility with Ugandans, because it will always be this rationale, okay, these guys are the rich ones, they control everything anyway, so I can kind of, I have a justification for not being truthful, which is of course not right, but the step to do that is easier. So that's, I think, one thought I have to that, and I don't know if that helps. Thank you. I hope you get better soon. You sound not so good. I think you probably sound better usually.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Great that you still joined.
If there is also feedbacks of today's teaching, you're open to give feedback, like what has spoken to you, please, from YWAM Kochi and Ibadan. Also, you can give feedback, just not only about the discussion what you had, but also for Andreas' teaching from this morning.
Yes. Yeah, and I will send this presentation to you. So
yes, please. I think the presentation and the words that you used, I think it can really be more easily connected to secular people also, that it's not just like how we use terminology in church, but it's more beyond that. So I think it would be really helpful. Maybe we can get your presentation.
Yeah, you will get that. I'll send it to Joel, and Joel will then spread it to all of you. If you want to have it, you have to contact Joel.